It's working! It's working!
Now this is podcasting.
Welcome to the HOLDO Maneuver podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves into Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
This is your first time listening, and this sometimes short-form Star Wars podcast will share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away.
Hey all, in Phantom Menace, what does Qui-Gon Jinn turn into?
I'm not sure. Crude matter.
Crude matter. No, a Sith kebab. Terrible.
Yeah.
Just
So,
terrible.
yes. So today we are doing episode 36 of the HOLDO Maneuver. We have two guests with us today. They are, I will let them introduce themselves. Laurence, you go first, and then Aaron, you go second.
Yes, I am Laurence. I have been growing up with Star Wars, born in 1977, so I've known it all my life.
Nice.
I'm Aaron, and about the same. Star Wars has been around as long as I have, so I'm just happy to be here.
Very cool. Happy for us to all to get to kind of reminisce about the first prequel from George Lucas, the Phantom Menace, that came back out in back on actually Mike's 13th birthday in 1999.
Something like that.
Yeah, because it came out May 19th, 1999. So
That'd be it.
When this young man became a teenager is when the Phantom Menace got released into theaters.
Thankfully, I had seen the first three Star Wars prior to this one.
Yes. Now, so before we get into like our main discussion, sometimes we do the I Am Your Father Storytime segment. This week, my bit of it was just going to be that my son bought an inflatable Among Us costume just because. And
He's a teenager. That's what they do.
that's it. That's the entire story. But yeah.
Being a dad is cool, man. My daughter's way into Sharknado right now, so
Nice.
She's not a teenager, but she's obsessed with sharks and tornadoes.
Very nice. Well, good luck in the years to come when she gets to that.
Good luck going through all these movies first.
Yeah.
They get pretty rough.
Yes.
Isn't there another one coming out this year?
Oh, I don't know.
I feel like there's another
hope not.
Sharknado.
Oh, I'll be
coming out this
watching
year.
it if it is, I guess.
Anybody else have any stories besides myself or Aaron?
Well,
Just
kind of
my
Star
kid's
Wars-
gotten into Disney, so we're on the right path
There
to get her to Star Wars.
in the right IP area, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of Star Wars related. I popped on Phantom Menace just to kind of do some last minute like note taking or whatnot, and my dog basically just left the living room and was like, no, not again. I'm out.
Nice.
No love. No love for the Phantom Menace.
Well, speaking of that, let's get into our topic this week about 1999's episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I know each of us kind of have some notes on stuff that we'd want to talk about. We're probably not going to go like in storyline order of like how the movie takes place, just kind of jump all over the
I
place.
wrote my notes. It's how my brain works. It doesn't go in order. It's just, this and this and those. I forgot about this.
Well,
Yeah,
George didn't go in order, so why would you guys go in order?
Yeah, it's like Yoda's telling
Exactly.
story. It's in between and like you jumped in there, but it's like poetry. It rhymes. So
Right, George?
yeah. So is there anyone that wants to go first, or shall I take it away?
Take it away, man.
Start at the top.
like any of the Star Wars titles, the title itself can relate to many things within that movie. But one of the real Phantom Menaces of the Phantom Menace is Mr. Palps himself, Sheev, as it were. And it's kind of cool to see kind of like the beginnings of Sheev in this movie and how that all starts to play out in here. And I even like how like John Williams uses the Emperor's theme in this, which I guess if a kid is or anyone is watching these in like chronological order, that would be the first time they'd hear that music. So like later on when he shows up in like 5 or 6, then they'd be like, oh, I remember that from back in that. And my question always was too, is like, as someone that may be coming into these movies for the first time that hadn't seen 4, 5, or 6, or if like you're like, because I actually, when I showed the movies to my son, I actually showed him them in 1 through 6 order, because I just wanted to, because I had experienced them 4 through 3, so I wanted to see how somebody else would experience them a different way. So him seeing him that way, I wanted to see if he'd pick up on that Sheev was the dude in the cloak in the movie, and he didn't right at first. So I guess the movie does a pretty good job of, like, if you don't know that Palpatine and the Emperor, or who's not even the Emperor in this yet, or Sidious are both the same person, then you might not know that they are.
Well, I can remember seeing in the theaters, and that last line that he says to Anakin about "we'll be watching your career with great interest," and only a few chuckles, and I'm like, how does not anyone else know?
Yeah,
that's great.
My brother-in-laws, now they're older now, but they were little, and then they watched 1, 2, 3 without ever knowing that there was a 4, 5, 6, and so I showed it to them. But yeah, their experience was kind of interesting, because I saw them, the guy that they were taught was the hero of the universe, ultimately later is not that. And I enjoyed watching their similar, seeing what they would catch up on and what they didn't catch up on. And everyone talks about, oh, if you watch in that order, you don't get the big surprise in 5. Well, that's not their surprise. Their surprise is the little boy that is supposed to be the savior ends up, enjoying chucking some younglings into the lightsaber. So that's their surprise. Woo! But it also adds tension when they do ultimately watch 4, 5, 6, because they're watching it with a different set of eyes. They're watching it with the eyes of like, oh, Luke's a lot like his dad. He could go the same way that his dad did. And there's a lot of little things that add tension that for us wasn't tension, but to them, they're like, well, does Darth know that's his daughter? Why is Obi-Wan being so coy with Luke? And so it's an interesting way to watch it 1 through 6, I think, if you haven't seen them before. So yeah, some people get really angry about it, and I'm just like, you're the fandom menace. Calm down.
Yes.
Just
watch it however you want.
the way they enjoy them.
My nephews watched it 4, 5, 6, then 1 through 3, and their take was 1, 2, 3 are gross because it's a love story. So they were not buying it because of the whole icky love story. And when they watched it,
were they under the age of 10?
I don't remember their exact ages. It was several years ago, so it was right around the age of 10. So yeah,
I was gonna say that seems like about the age that they would still think that, probably. But
we get to about 14, 15, then watch episode 2 and Padme in that white outfit, and then see how gross they think.
Yeah, between Anakin's age in episode 1 and Padme's age in episode 1, that's where it goes. Which I know Mike has a note about.
It's watching this again. I haven't watched it in a couple of years, and the acting between Natalie Portman and Jake Lloyd, it was very creepy to me, knowing the future of where their relationship goes. I couldn't get past this little creep factor. I don't know why. Something about it.
I mean, I guess if you know that they ultimately fall in love, but I mean, they're 5 years apart. She's supposed to be 14. He's supposed to be 9, right? If I remember right. I mean, 5 years is nothing later on in life. And it's not like they grew up together, they're in this little adventure together, and then 10 years go by. So it's not like, I mean, he was thinking about it every day because he's Anakin's a little pervert. It's okay. She probably didn't think about it more than, here or there, for all those years. And so then when they see each other again, she's obviously still beautiful and just more beautiful because she's, in her mid-20s or whatever. And he's a 19-year-old full of piss and vinegar in that second movie. But I never really got too weirded out, even though, they fall in love. I think it's just kind of like, he's just got like an innocent crush, and she's just kind of like a mentor to him in the first movie.
That's true. And Weird Al even sings about it in The Saga Begins too.
Yeah.
Oh, Weird Al.
How about you, Lawrence?
Yeah, I never really got weirded out by it. Speaking of Weird Al, I'm from the same camp as Aaron, because it was one of those kind of innocent crushes that kind of blossomed into something. I mean, he idolized her, obviously, and like Aaron said, 10 years go by, and you still got that crush going on somebody that's this almost like this authority. She kind of takes over the mother model for him, the woman in his life, and so he of course is obsessing over her. So it never really bothered me in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I think that might be where it gets.
It didn't until just now, like this past watching. That was something about it this past time.
I think it's probably like the hindsight of like now knowing,
right?
Probably like that. Yeah, I think where it ends up getting weirder is like where you guys are saying with Anakin's like obsession like later on.
Oh, yeah, it gets definitely way worse later on.
And like, although that's like Anakin's whole thing anyways, is like his sense of attachment to everything is what basically causes all of that. Now the other thing that I really enjoy about all three of the prequels, like not just in particular Phantom Menace, is Ewan McGregor in all of them, because I think he's really great in all three, especially in Revenge of the Sith. And I know that Lucas originally was going to frame the prequels around Obi-Wan, but then decided to frame it around Anakin instead, which I think ends up being better, because then that way the prequels are about the father, and then the original trilogy is about that father's son, kind of redeeming that father.
Plus we got the Obi-Wan series out of it, so
yeah. And then
Obi-Wan's kind of like the Han of these movies a little bit, in that he gets to be the hero, and he absolutely grows into like that Alec Guinness like mimicry really well across the three movies, as he becomes Obi-Wan Kenobi, the legend kind of thing.
Yeah, you really see him take on his mannerism starting in episode 2.
Yeah, with his sweet
the
Jedi
beard
mullet.
stroking and such.
Stroking the pauses in the lines, the dialogue, and everything. He really picks up those mannerisms. Yeah.
Nice. Was there any points that you guys wanted to bring up, since Mike and I've brought up a couple?
Aaron? Everyone craps on the sand line in episode 2. I hate sand. I just want to say, did these people not watch this movie? If you grew up in slavery on a sand planet where they, sandstorms are very, very dangerous, you probably would hate sand too. Just saying.
Yeah, because it's coarse and it gets everywhere.
They're very, very dangerous, these sandstorms.
Yeah, and well, in particular, the 3 out of the 4 of us living somewhere where there is sandstorms.
I get snowstorms. Yeah. I'm on Hoth. So
yeah, there you go. We're on Tatooine. You're on Hoth. Yeah. Yeah, look it up. That's not a made up word, everybody. That is.
I didn't hear what he said.
Haboobs.
Said, yeah.
Haboobs?
Yeah. Basically, Mad Max Fury Road, the sandstorm, it's kind of like that.
The big wall of sand.
Yeah.
Big wall of sand.
I got a picture years ago that is like a great, like I was from far enough away you could just see the wall of sand coming. But yeah, it's definitely crazy. Was there any things that stand out to you that you wanted to bring up at all, Laurence?
Well, there's a few things. One thing that bothered me, we were just talking about things that bothered us on their last viewing. And I brought this up to Aaron because I got the 4K set and I'm watching it on my projector and everything. And just the special effects don't sit right for some reason. And I Aaron, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about that, how like they just don't look like they're finished, and the quality of them really look kind of cut and paste. They don't look like they're blended into the actual frame.
I wish.
And you had some technical aspects on that we were talking about.
If you guys have ever seen on YouTube, people scan 35 millimeter trailers, and if you watch the 35 millimeter trailers for the prequels, they look so much better than the 4K. For those who don't know, the 4K release of the prequels are all based on masters that were done for 3D. That's before Lucas sold the company. He had the 3 prequels converted to 3D, and when you do 3D, you do a lot of digital noise reduction. You smooth it out. Grain does not work well in 3D, and so those are the masters that are used for that 4K box set. And if you watch, if you bring up Phantom Menace 35 millimeter trailer, watch it. The effects are so much more organic on that film out because of just that texturing and everything than what we watch when we do our rewatches. And it's kind of disappointing because there's a lot of practical effects in these prequel movies that kind of get forgotten about. Everyone talks about the CGI and everything. There's a lot of models and stuff that are used, but yeah, it bothers me too. But that's just something that annoys me because I know how good it could look if they did the proper restoration for I love 3D. Laurence knows, just me and him are both 3D guys. Yeah. But for a home 4K 2D release, it's a shame that's what we have.
Yeah, that actually reminds me that I got bummed out because I had brought my son to see this film when they did the 3D re-release.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever year that was, and
I feel like it was 2011 or 12, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I remember the 3D glasses were like Anakin's pod racing goggles too.
Yeah.
Which I still have somewhere, and my plan was, I was like, all right, cool. Every year I'm gonna bring him to see one of these in theaters, so so he can have the experience of seeing all 6 movies in theaters, like I did. Because I got to see the special editions when those came back out in theaters. So, I mean, I didn't get to see the original releases because by the time Return of the Jedi came out, I was -3 years old. But yeah, then I was bummed that they didn't do Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, or 4, 5, 6,
and they're done. They show them sometimes at the conventions and the Star Wars conventions, and it's a shame because it's a fun movie to watch in 3D.
Yeah,
because I went as well. You went, Larry, I know.
Yep. It'd be awesome if it was at home, and unfortunately that kind of died off, and hopefully gets revitalized. I know the new Wakanda Forever is getting a 3D release, so maybe, but who knows?
I still have my 3D TV in the other room, so
but me and him do the 3D projector thing, and then
nice.
Yeah,
it's the only way to fly.
Every time I see Revenge of the Sith and there's the shot with Mace pointing the saber almost right at the camera, I was like, man, that shot would look amazing in 3D. I feel like I'm gonna get my eye poked out by Nick Fury.
Then you can be like him.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think the same kind of thing happened with the Lord of the. I know that with Peter Jackson, he went back through and he didn't redo the effects for the Lord of the Rings film, but he remastered them to a point so that they fit with the remastering of that movie, what was actually shot on film of that. So
he wanted to match more the Hobbit look.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of noise reduction and color timing changes and stuff to try to match them all. And so there's good and bad in that Lord of the Rings set. It looks better than the old Blu-rays, but it has its plus and minuses.
Yeah. So I wonder if Disney would ever take or go back through and do any remasterings of these films at all. Because I've seen online too, there's been ideas of the same way that I know that George doesn't have these to do anything with anymore, basically. But there to be special editions of the prequel trilogy too. Whereas there's technically kind of a special edition of Phantom Menace because there's the puppet version of Phantom Menace with Yoda and that, and then there's the digital Yoda.
And technically the cut of Phantom on home video has always been a little bit longer than the actual theatrical cut. There's
more the pod
shots in there.
The second lap of the pod race is mostly cut out in the original theatrical. And then he had Yoda, the original puppet of Yoda, which was Thankfully, they changed. That's one of the changes that I totally.
That original puppet.
I mean, I
Yoda
love
was a
puppets.
choice. That was a choice.
Yeah, because like Yoda looks older in that than
Yeah,
he
it was
did
bizarre.
in Empire.
Yeah,
And then I guess that makes more sense for him to just be CG throughout the prequels rather than puppet CG.
it adds continuity to
Yeah.
that character, and but yeah, like the three of us were all about the same age when this movie came out. Larry was a tad older, but like I still remember going to see it opening weekend and being very excited, and everyone talks about, oh my god, it was so disappointing. Like me and my friends, man, we had a great time watching this movie.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
I did.
You'd always dreamed about like those little lines that Obi-Wan would give about, back when the Jedi Knights, 1,000 years, and you wanted to see that. You wanted to see lots of Jedis. You wanted to see them in their prime. Luke was never really in his prime in those other movies, and obviously Obi-Wan was past his. And just right away, you get the lightsaber through the shield door and stuff like that. That was just blew my mind at that age. I was like, this is what I want to see. And the lightsaber fight in the last act, it's still probably my favorite of any of the movies. Darth Maul is super rad, underused, but sometimes that's okay. Like the Hannibal Lecter thing.
Less is more.
Too much of a good villain is not a good thing. I didn't get to hate. Me and my friends, we didn't hate this movie.
I think a lot of the hate comes from, like, I guess maybe like the older generation that maybe saw all of them like as they came out, we're kind of like in that generation, like where these were the movies that came out like when we were old enough.
Movies.
Yeah. And then like now and then, like some kids will have like the sequel trilogy that like that's their era of it, and that's what came out when they were able to see them in theaters, or like the Clone Wars animated series on TV. And then there's the I guess like Laurence, for you'd have like that biggest like gap of like where there was like I guess essentially the dark times where they're
dark times.
It was just like the books, I guess, for during that time.
Yeah. It was bizarre because there was that period where Star Wars came out, it ended with Return of the Jedi, and then there was nothing. And there was a period there where you were an absolute nerd, and it wasn't a cool thing then if you said you liked Star Wars. Everybody was all Star Trek, Next Generation, and you're like, I'm more of a Star Wars guy, and people are looking at you like you have a third eye, like, oh, that stuff's old and dead. But yeah, I mean, I'm with Aaron on this, and I do love Phantom Menace. I'm not saying it's the best one of the series, but I don't get all the hate for it. I see it for something completely different than most people do. I saw that movie countless times in the theater, and then I can even remember during the pod racing sequence, I would like jump up to the front row just so I could just kind of get as full frame into that as I could, and then go back to my seat for the rest of it.
Okay.
I was so into it. And like Aaron said, there were things that we just didn't see before. I still remember getting the chills when Darth Maul ignites the other end of that lightsaber, and you're just like, holy crap. And and I also agree with Aaron, that's probably my favorite duel in the entire series.
Did they put that dual lightsaber in the trailer, or was that a surprise? I don't remember.
That was I feel like it
was in the TV spots, wasn't it, when he held it out? And
I think they show him holding it out, but I don't think they show him igniting the other end. I could be wrong, but I don't remember seeing that in the trailer. I remember seeing that for the first time in the theater. And
it was super rad on the big screen.
Anyway.
Yeah, I remember it being just awesome when I saw it the first time.
I mean, even just, this sounds stupid, but I remember that opening night. I think I saw it Sunday, the Sunday of the opening weekend, if I remember right, because I went with a bunch of friends, and my sister had a boyfriend who was a douchebag, but he was nice enough to drive me to the theater to meet some friends, and he was like, all right, see you later. But I just remember that the opening crawl, even, Star Wars, comes out like we'd seen, in 3 other movies. But I remember even just looking at the star field and being, oh, it's so bright and there's so many more stars. This is going to be amazing. Like, I was in on that movie from the get-go. And I just, and I don't hate it. Love the pod race. I love George basically getting his Ben-Hur scene in there,
Yep.
It's super rad.
getting a little bit more of American Graffiti in there as well too, incorporating.
Well, yeah,
that
he's
into that.
his hot rod racing days. He was pulling that out.
Yeah. Like speaking of the pod racer too, I know that Mike and I played the video game. Did either of you play the pod racer video game?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Maybe, yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
That's probably one of the better Star Wars games. Rogue Squadron was a fun one, and then Knights of the Old Republic. Those are probably my top 3 right there.
Nice. Yeah, I just remember like the arcade machine version of that was awesome, just because it was like shaped like Anakin's like pod racer, and you could just do like that. That's one of the things, like if I had ever become rich, I was like, that would be one thing that I'd want like in a home arcade, would be that specific version of the pod racer arcade game, because I'd want to be able to like play it like just doing that instead of, because I just played it on a computer, so I was just like moving the mouse around, so that's not as fun as doing the actual same movements as Anakin moving his pod racer around. And it's always cool now.
$12,000 on eBay.
Hold on a second. All right. Apple Pay.
I love that game. I remember a friend of mine had the episode 1 Phantom Menace game on the computer, and I didn't play too much, but I remember I thought it was so cool because you could walk around Tatooine and like talk to people, and this was before like GTA and open world gaming kind of took over, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. You can walk around the city. This is rad. And I remember also the Jedi Power Battles one. You had to be a Jedi and then go get killed by droids, because it was. I remember that game being kind of hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like the Mike, you with the like the rolling shielded droids.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember what game it was, but whatever one had those droids that roll in and put a shield on them, they were the bane of my existence in whatever game it was. I could never. Oh, I got so mad I turned the game off every time they come out. Every time.
One of the things I really liked about this movie too was that Anakin was the one that built 3PO. And I don't know what comic it is, but there's a comic that takes place that like during like the events, or it might just be like a comic book adaptation of Empire Strikes Back, where it's like a scene like where after like 3PO had got like blown apart in that film, and it shows like Vader go in there and he picks up 3PO's head, and I think you can probably find this if you Google it, but he has like puts like 3PO's head to his and just looks like he's like doing like that. And it shows and it's like and it shows like a flashback of like Anakin building 3PO. So it's almost like Vader like recognizes that's the protocol droid that's
mine.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool.
I want to know.
But then he also kind of more or less forgets about him after Revenge of the Sith anyways too.
Is there just like a protocol droid kit you can mail order? Because they all look the same. Anakin's supposedly building him from like scrap parts, but it looks identical to the one you see on the Trade Federation ship.
It's probably just like a like standard model, but then he's probably like putting his own Anakin touches on 3PO. So that that's why he's got that Sith activation.
It's probably like like rebuilding an old car.
Right.
You get the pieces for that car, and so him in his junkyard days, he was always good at building things. You guys.
Yeah, I know, it's true.
He's such a little braggart in Phantom Menace. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That carries over though.
He's very 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 humble.
I wouldn't have made it so long if I wasn't so good at everything.
The other thing that was in the comics too was there's like this whole thing that was implied that Sheev also like manipulated the Force to essentially immaculately conceive Anakin of the Force within.
Mom
Shmi.
says she doesn't know who the dad is. She just woke up pregnant,
So that's kind of interesting too. So it leads to more of like a Antichrist vibe than a Messiah vibe for Anakin at that point. But I think that's kind of interesting as well too, with Anakin's whole thing of him like essentially being like an immaculate conception of like the
Mhm.
Force in that, and like Qui-Gon trying to figure out what's going on there with that. That's speaking of this. What are your thoughts on midichlorians?
I was just saying, you're gonna bring up midichlorians.
Yeah,
Uh, people
Somebody
get
has to do
so
this podcast.
people get really, really up in arms about midichlorians. It's so funny to me because I have friends that are like hardcore atheists, like very like we're science guys, but they'll fucking hate. Oh, I shouldn't say the F word. Sorry. They'll
you're fine.
freaking
We're
hate.
enough in. It's okay.
All right, all right. They'll freaking hate midichlorians, and I'm like, well, from the perception of if the Force is this spiritual thing, it's also there's got to be a scientific explanation, right? In some way. So if science is the slow understanding of vast circumstances beyond our comprehension, midichlorians make sense. That's the way that the Jedi, who are losing their way anyways, if you read the books and then get way into this stuff, by the time of the prequels, the Jedi are becoming more political, and they're losing their spiritualism. They're getting more into science, and midichlorians is their way of kind of justifying and quantifying how they do what they do. So once again, I never got that mad about midichlorians. I was never like,
It is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
you want to just walk around and be like, oh, the Force is strong with you, not with you. Oh, you got some. Like, it gives more of an explanation of how they make their decisions at this point in time.
Yeah, and like how some people can be more proficient within it just because of, like, with Anakin being predisposed to have a way higher midichlorian count than, say, maybe, I don't know, Genji from the Clone Wars or stuff. But speaking of things that people get butthurt about, let's go to Jar Jar.
Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, I'm ready to sink my teeth into this one.
All right, so I'll let you go first.
Well, I'm gonna kick it off with this thing that I fully believe in, and I think Aaron knows where I'm gonna go with this. And that is, I don't know if you guys have heard about the Jar Jar Sith Lord theory.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen stuff about it. I don't know too much, but
I totally believe that was the intention and the direction that was going. Basically, if you are just listening to this and you're like, wait, what? A Sith Lord? How is that possible? There's a lot of little clues that lead to believing that he was basically behind a lot of this. If you take into the account that, I mean, think about Yoda, like in the beginning in Empire, when you first meet Yoda, how he's basically kind of like this foolish character. And then you find out he's this master. Well, George Lucas is basically playing on that through an entire movie. There's things that Jar Jar does that can't really be explained, like when he jumps into the lake and he jumps like 20 feet in the air, like, unless he's using maybe the Force. I mean, he's always around Palpatine all the time, like he's manipulating Palpatine. There's stuff where you can kind of see little hand gestures and where he's kind of manipulating things. He seems like he's moving the plot along, but he's doing it in this foolish way that you don't really see it happening. And then George Lucas has even gone in interviews before Phantom Menace came out and said that Jar Jar is the key to everything, and it doesn't work without Jar Jar. So for this character to be basically this foolish character that means nothing the rest of the trilogy, but George is so focused on making him work and saying he's the key to the movies, that doesn't make any sense. I think what happened was the backlash, of course, of Jar Jar and everything else. Studios basically said, hey, you got to take this character out. And so he basically made him be the one that puts Palpatine in power, and then that's it. In episode 2. But I mean, there's so many, and then Dooku gets kind of like thrown in there. Like there's all of a sudden there's this Count Dooku. Okay, cool. Like it was just kind of bad writing to make up for what was going to be happening with Jar Jar. Like I'm a firm believer that this was the intent. I don't know if you have more to expand on this, Aaron. I've got so many points on that.
I take the lighter road of, I think Jar Jar was George's kind of ode to Buster Keaton and physical slapstick humor, and he's an idiot, and he's there to lighten the load, and these movies have always had a character that critics kind of harp on, whether it's Ewoks or 3PO or whatever, and then Jar Jar's there. I'm he's there a lot of times. There he's right.
Maybe Jar Jar was supposed to bring balance to the Force, not Anakin. They never tested him. So
what's his midichlorian count?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
For me, the Jar Jar's fine. He is what he is. But the whole Gungans as a whole, maybe they're the problem. Maybe their whole race is the problem. Maybe they could have been different, and I don't know. Not to get their whole involvement in this movie, while justified in the end, if they weren't in there, would the movie be any worse? Or would it be better? Like,
I mean, they
you
serve
take away
couple of great purposes. One, George and his creative team were like, hey, let's do an underwater city. They're there for that. They were like, hey, let's do a pretty cool underwater chase. There's always a bigger fish. They serve a purpose there. So, would the movie be any better or worse? Who knows? But they're there.
They're pretty much the Ewoks of the prequels.
Yeah,
Ewoks you can understand.
Although I think Mike had this as a note too, where it's like implied that like the whole Gungans are like a more primitive like species and whatnot.
That's one of my
and that's how like the
no sense
above the water Nabooians, Nabooish, I don't Nabootians think of them, but they're actually very technologically advanced, like as you end up seeing like in that whole like battle between them and the battle droids at near the end of the movie. So I like how it's like with that, it's like teaching both the audience and like Padme and everybody that lives above the surface of like not to judge like the Gungans and like Jar Jar in that respect by like how they appear or how they act, but like how like based off of like their preconceived notions of that, but like how like they actually are and like how they actually want to help and like be like part of this planet too. So I do like that in there too. I like your like that whole like Sith Lord like Jar Jar theory too. I've seen that before, but I've never seen it like that in depth part of it.
I've never gone in depth part. I've seen it.
There's a lot of and if you look at even too, Jar Jar is encouraging Anakin to get with Padme even. Like, oh, she's pretty hot, like and then there's also like this thing that kind of shows disrespect for the Jedi, where he makes fun of Qui-Gon behind Qui-Gon's back, and he does it like in front of Anakin, and he's showing that disrespect to the Jedi. So he's planting the seeds for these things, like for Anakin to see. And
I mean, Palpatine could have just been mind controlling him too. You never know.
Yeah. So,
but no, it's an interesting take on Jar Jar.
Yeah,
the real Phantom Menace is Jar Jar.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when you think of menace, like
really
he is a menace to the movie, so that would make sense for that to be the title.
Yeah. All that to be said, that I feel very bad at all the hate and crap that both Ahmed Best got for the movie, as well as Jake Lloyd, especially and Jake Lloyd too, because of like how young he was, and like
he was just a kid, man, and he was just doing what he was told. And,
I remember Best like delivered the role the way he was asked to.
Yeah. So. I mean, they both did. They both did what they were told. They read the lines that were written for them. And
for Jake Lloyd, there's scenes where they put in dialogue when his mouth wasn't moving just for added things. Like that's not on him. That's like when he gets put in the pod racer and Qui-Gon picks him up, he makes this audible wee noise, but he's like stoic in the face.
When Celebration 3 in 2005, like I randomly ran into Jake Lloyd at that, and I told him, I was like, I thought you were awesome at Jingle All the Way. I told him that specifically. He's like, oh, you don't normally hear that at a Star Wars convention. I was like, well, I wanted you to know that I thought you were awesome in that, and that you're also awesome as Anakin. So, and there's this super awkward photo of him and I together with. It's more awkward because at that point, Mike knows this, that I had gotten like essentially
Shoulder length hair.
Yeah, I basically grew my hair to look like Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, and so I even got like the Anakin like perm, which it was before I was bald, so it's probably why I'm bald. But
You didn't have you should have had the little
The
Little
rat tail.
oh no, I never had the Jedi Padawan tail
yeah.
braid. They sell those now though, because now you don't have to do all the hard work. You can just buy one and just
You
put
can
it
always
behind
buy
your
a
ear.
rat tail. It's just depending on where you pin it.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, that definitely has to be one of the things that get said though, is that Ahmed Best and like Jake Lloyd definitely didn't deserve like all the crap that they got like after the movie came out.
I mean, these are just, I know we love it, but these are just movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And one thing I always say is nobody hates movies like people who love to talk about how they love movies. And that even works even more in the microcosm of nobody hates Star Wars like people who love to talk about how they love Star Wars. And there was a lot of cruelty to them in particular, and to George Lucas. I mean, I'm of the mindset that one of the reasons George finally just kind of said, "Why am I still doing this?" is because like, well, why am I going to put out stuff if all I do just gets crapped on?
Right.
Like how much are you going to take before you're just like, I'm good. I'm just going to go home and hang out and get married again.
Yeah.
Count my billions.
Yeah. Build
You guys
it.
hate
Yeah,
it so
it
much
doesn't
that you
seem-
keep giving me money.
It does suck for Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd. And what's unfortunate is that George Lucas is a great storyteller, but he's not good at dialogue, and that really
This is
shows
true.
through.
And he'd be the
on
first to
Phantom
tell you that.
Menace.
He always talks about how
Yeah.
he's good at laying out story, but also like with episode 1, it's well known he took that script to a lot of people, including Carrie Fisher, and was like, "Hey, you want to work on this?" And they were, "It's fine, George. It works exactly as it is." And Star Wars movies have always kind of had awkward dialogue. They're from a galaxy far, far away. Their sense of humor is kind of weird, including in 4, 5, and 6. The sense of humor in those movies is not your normal, blockbuster cinema type sense of humor. And the dialogue is not good in those ones either. I mean, like if you break it down, like it's because you have guys like Harrison Ford and Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing saying these lines that it works.
Right. That's one of the points I made, was the acting. It just didn't feel as good as the original trilogy in this. Like everyone they showed up and did their lines, but there was something missing. Like it all fell flat. A lot of like the stuff that could have been more impactful.
I can see like with that, but like what you're saying too like kind of goes with like the whole dialogue thing with like in the same way like people gave Hayden Christensen crap for like Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, was like some of it's just like the dialogue they're being given, and then everyone is kind of knows like how George Lucas directs anyways, like like the whole faster, more intense.
Yeah.
On the other side of this laptop, you can't see, I have a sticker of him.
Faster, more intense.
Yeah.
People crap on Hayden too, and I'm like, do you not remember how Luke was for the first 2 movies? I'm like, he's a wine bag for 2 movies, and you're gonna give Hayden crap?
Yeah, and Hayden's even said that he's based his performance off of how Luke is in A New Hope. That's how
I want to go to Tashi Station and get some power converters. I mean, he's a whiner for 2 movies, man. Like we think of him in like Jedi, where he's like coming into his own, but like Hayden's character in episode 2, I'm just like, he reminds me like his kid, like
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, playing with his little jet,
I just want to hang out and play with my toys.
That Obi-Wan gave to him.
Eventually.
Yeah. The other thing that has to be said about Phantom Menace too is it's definitely one of the Star Wars films that has like the best score to it that John Williams did.
Yeah.
2 of my favorite songs.
Yeah, like between Duel of the Fates, which like I think is still the only Star Wars score music video that was like, I don't know who, we probably remember TRL, where it like premiered on TRL as like one of the top 10 music videos in that one time.
I remember TRL, but I don't remember this.
yeah, look it up. You can find like when the Duel of the Fates music video debuted on TRL. But yeah, and this has been later on, but like in some of like those Disney Gallery like making of specials where like Dave Filoni has like this whole kind of discussion talking about like the Duel of the Fates in Phantom Menace and how it's
Yeah.
essentially like the song is called Duel of the Fates, but it's like essentially this fight for
Anakin's soul.
Anakin's soul.
Yeah.
Like if Qui-Gon wasn't to die and like he had actually trained Anakin, he would have been more of like the father figure that Anakin needed rather than the brother figure that Obi-Wan ends up being. And then maybe would have had any kind of less impact from Palps off in the side tangents over there. So it's interesting that because of like what happens with like that fight of like all the implications from it. And that's why I think it'd be cool too if like Star Wars did some like what if storylines the same way it's kind of like DC and like Marvel have done stories like that. Even if they did them like as like animated specials on Disney Plus now. Maybe like in the vein of like the Tales of the Jedi, but like
what they could do
what
something
if
like that.
Tales of the Jedi? Because they've done stuff like that even with like the video games where they had the Revenge of the Sith video game where it could be like what if Obi-Wan beat like Anakin at the end of that, or if like Anakin beat him but or he did beat Anakin, other way around, strike that reverse. Anakin beat Obi-Wan and then went and killed Palpatine after that and became like the Emperor and whatnot. So like Duel of the Fates, I love that, and it gets used a lot in different stuff. They even used it like in the Obi-Wan trailer more recently, kind of mixed with Battle of the Heroes from Revenge of the Sith, and then Augie's Great Municipal Band, like the music from like the closing in the movie is really great too. I think Mike and I did like a melody, like it was like it was like a John Williams melody in high school where it was like E.T. mixed with Hook mixed with Augie's Great Municipal.
No, we played the soundtrack for this entirely too.
Okay, I know we did a John Williams melody thing too. Which
we did that.
Tried to find that because I liked that mixture of like the songs like blending into the next John Williams music next to the next.
The yearly concert where the orchestra and the band played together. We did these songs.
Nice. But is there any like besides those two, or I guess of those two, was there any music or musical cues that stood out?
I mean, I think this is one of John Williams' best scores. It's my favorite Star Wars score, probably, actually, out of all the ones he's done.
I can agree with that.
He's the GOAT, in a lot of people's minds, and a few different times in his career, he's kind of evolved or changed his sound, and starting with Phantom Menace was one of those times, just like Star Wars. If you listen to the scores before Star Wars, it was a different sound. It was more Bernard Herrmann kind of stuff. And then, Star Wars was a bigger, brassier sound. And that was kind of his go-to. And then kind of the prequel trilogy, he kind of, once again, evolved the sound a little bit, changed it. Just like with the sequel trilogy, his scores there are, they're still the same, from the the heartbeat of it all, but like he's got some different things going on in those. And when people crap on the sequel trilogy, I'm like, well, if nothing else, you got 3 new John Williams Star Wars scores, and that's pretty cool.
Yep,
definitely. And apparently he's also not retiring anymore too, so there's that.
90 to 100 is your best decade, according to yeah. Keep going.
While we're talking about the score too, we should probably touch on the fact that the score being released before the movie came out was also the infamous
Qui-Gon's death.
Qui-Gon's Noble End or something like that for the soundtrack listing. You're like, oh, so I guess
there's that
dies in this movie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
I think they even. I feel like the novelization even came out before the movie, and like if you read the novelization, you obviously know what was going on going into the movie.
Well, Qui-Gon didn't have to die. He could have just slowed down and waited for Obi-Wan to catch up instead of getting separated. Like he was
that is the other thing with that too is at the beginning of the movie we saw the Jedi speed running. How come they just didn't do that?
I know I'm not talking about how everyone gets stabbed in the stomach now it's magically fine.
Yeah. That is funny, like how everybody gets stabbed in the gut now. I'm like, yo,
Qui-Gon's like, wait, what the heck? Force healing now, and
yeah, whatever. Qui-Gon's like, wait, what the heck?
I got gypped.
He's like, well, I did figure out the Force ghost thing, so there's that.
Yeah. Took him a little while,
Yeah.
We were talking about musical cues. One of the musical cues that I love hearing is Anakin's theme, and especially in the credits. I don't know how many stay for the credits because there's no end credit scene, but Williams does a magnificent.
This is before that.
job.
Samuel Jackson doesn't show up at the end and ask you to join the
No,
the Jedi Council.
Jedi Council
Tells you you're not being accepted.
But if you listen to the end credit music, and you're watching it, and you're finishing the movie, listen to how beautifully John Williams slows that Anakin's theme down, and it gets darker and darker until it turns into the Imperial March, and you hear Vader.
Nice.
So you hear the Vader's breathing, and it's another one of those like spine chilling moments because you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that was another good thing for this movie too, was with like the marketing for it, like that first teaser poster with Anakin,
the shadow and everything.
Shadow, yeah. The version where it was both on the sand and then like on like the hut behind him, not Jabba, just
don't look back,
a building. And because I liked how they ended up doing that actually, like in Attack of the Clones with like Anakin's shadow and that, with to make it kind of look like Vader too.
When he's talking to Padme and his shadow's there.
Yeah. So I know we're getting near the end of where we'll have to wrap up soon. So I figured the last few things I'm gonna do some kind of like lightning round points that that Mike had put in here, and I'm just gonna bring some up to see if you guys have any theories, thoughts on them. So the first one was Yoda and Mace Windu are at least 50% responsible for Anakin's turn. Because Mace is kind of more or less,
but they're kind of dicks to him.
Yeah, kind of like Mace is more or less like a douche, like all three movies, and even in the Clone Wars series, and even Tales of the Jedi. I think it's just that Mace Windu is just a douche.
I love Mace Windu, but yeah, he can be he's a bit of a dick.
Yeah. He's a good guy, but he's also a douche.
He's like he's that person in authority that like you respect because he when push comes to shove, he's rad, but like he's also like kind of a jerk. Yeah,
that's true. And then Mike had questions about the Jedi test that Windu performed on Anakin.
It's so simple. It's just
essentially being the Ghostbusters 2 test. Which it kind of is.
There's more to it, but what they show is just.
It'd be funnier if Mace Windu really like was just being a dick to him and was like zapping him. Like if you get it wrong, you're gonna zap you.
Yeah,
wavy lines.
Don't spit out.
And this one I like too is just because it kind of just shows the decline of the universe from the prequels into the original trilogy, with ships being, especially from Naboo, like being so stark in contrast to the original trilogy, like all shiny and futuristic looking, and then by the time we get to the original trilogy, like everything's like all beat to crap and
haggard and piecemeal,
dirty and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to the in episode 1, it's kind of it's about to fall, but it's the height of this empire, to use that phrase, and everything's new and they have money and everything's great, but obviously empires fall and become an actual empire. And then you have the rebels who are just like he said, piecemealing whatever they can get together. And I appreciate that as a touch, because it never dawned on me until this watch. It's a much more lived in universe in the original trilogy, because there's not money and freedoms around that there are then.
The Clone Wars had happened, and it was just
it goes to what you said early on, when you remember in the theater seeing all the stars. There's more planets then. It was a brighter time.
Definitely. To put it in terms of my other favorite franchise, which is still only just a trilogy, the prequel trilogy is 1955 Hill Valley, and the original trilogy is 1985 Hill Valley.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And then the sequel trilogy is 2015 Hill Valley. I don't know. and then speaking of, I guess not really speaking, but like Padme and Sabe in this with the great Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman switching out in this. And I want to say, was this like one of Keira Knightley's first roles too?
Yeah, it was.
This?
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. And because I know that they also like digitally altered Keira Knightley's voice in this too, because they were trying to
Fool you.
match, like match them to be a little bit closer to one another. But I remember like after.
Now this isn't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I was just gonna say, I remember after
finish.
seeing the movie the first time, I went back and tried to like see if I could tell like which one was Natalie Portman, which one was Keira Knightley when like the full makeup was on, because like when it's not on, you can tell who's Natalie Portman,
Clearly.
who's Keira Knightley. But like sometimes you can't really in that. And did either of you have any issue with trying to figure that out?
No, I actually figured it out while watching it the first time. I'm like, wait, that's Natalie Portman there. But, you know, I had seen everything Natalie Portman had done at that time because, you know, I was a fan of Leon, and then Beautiful Girls was another favorite of mine. So like I had seen her in so many things already to where I was able to recognize her. And I'm like, wait, that's Natalie Portman over there. That's that. So.
And I think that was.
I don't know. My question on it was, it's more of a theory I've seen that Padme wasn't really the queen. She was always the handmaid, and that Keira Knightley was actually the queen the whole time. And we're just all misinformed.
Oh, like she's like always, like she is actually the queen, but she's just always like in the handmaiden costume behind Keira Knightley.
No, that
and the queen.
Keira Knightley is the rightful queen. She's queen of Naboo, and that Natalie Portman was just the handmaid. Like,
this is Jar Jar Sith Lord Illuminati type stuff.
I had another thing I wanted to kind of touch on before we wrap up, and it's one of the things I really appreciate with George Lucas's storytelling. You know, and you have to kind of understand what George Lucas kind of grew up in. You know, watching those old serials of like Green Hornet, Flash Gordon, you know, like in the theaters, in between newsreels, and how those were structured, where the characters would get into trouble, and then it would be like, will he get out? And that, you know, it's all these cliffhanger things. Yeah. And he structures his storytelling that way, and does a magnificent job in Return of the Jedi, where you have the three separate storylines of, you know, the Ewok battle. You have you know, Luke and Vader, and the Emperor as another one, and then you have all the stuff with Lando and the rebels attacking inside. So, and then with each battle, with each scenario, something happens, and then it breaks away from that action to the other action, and then something similar, like they all kind of go bad at the same time, but they show it separately, and they all have their own little individual cliffhangers, much like those serials did. And what I love about the Phantom Menace is that, you know, George Lucas kind of one-ups himself and doesn't do three separate storylines. He does four, where they all these characters kind of get split up. You've got the Gungan battle, you have the Anakin in space with the battle droid stuff up there. And then you have the Padme with getting the Viceroy, and then you have the infamous Darth Maul battle. And if you watch how they're structured, they all, you know, have very similar flow. They all of their arc within their action, and you know, they'll all get into trouble at the exact same, you know, moment, and the way that it's structured in beats, and it's magnificent. The way it's pieced together, it's like one of my favorite things of the entire series to watch.
I really enjoy like how usually like how all like those scenes are structured like that, and like how it's like you said, that's he does that again like in Attack of the Clones, and then again in Revenge of the Sith, like interweaving back and forth between like these different like climactic events, and as they kind of like crescendo at the same times like that too.
Yeah, and you get into it,
and
right?
You go back to
like it just cuts away, and then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this was going on, you know. And then this, I mean, we've seen it multiple times, we're not going to forget, but when you're in the theater seeing it for the first time, you kind of like forget that, oh, that's right, we were watching this storyline, and this was happening, this was exciting, and then it cuts away just at that moment.
It builds up, and then you're waiting for the release, and then it cuts. And you know, you go back to like American Graffiti, he does the same thing as far as intertwining all these storylines at the same time. So he's that's his kind of storytelling way. He's got kind of an editor's mindset. And I've always appreciated, he took, you made the thing earlier about it. It's like poetry, it rhymes. He's got that whole clock kind of theory and storytelling, and that's why Phantom kind of mirrors Return of the Jedi in a lot of ways. And even just the opening shots are both ships going down and people arriving at a space station of some sort. But yeah, I really like that last act of Phantom. It's kind of just pitch perfect the way it goes from each segment to each segment. And I think of I don't know if you guys have read Paul Hirsch's, but Paul Hirsch was the editor, well, one of the 3 editors on New Hope, but he was the last one for the last 6 months. And he talked about how he would just sit and talk storytelling with George, and George would just like, oh, you got to do your second best set piece will be in the beginning, and your best one will obviously be in your last act, but you got to have your third best one somewhere in the middle, and then you kind of piecemeal out what you got left to every 10 minutes have something going on. And he, in all his movies, whether he's the producer or director or whatever, they all kind of follow that mindset.
Yeah, that's really well said. I enjoy. Yeah, I can't add anything to that, but I like that. I guess to close out for the episode, I'm just gonna ask everybody their favorite character from the Phantom Menace before we close out, and then that'll be it. So going around robin, start with Aaron, then Laurence, then Mike, then myself.
In Phantom Menace, probably Qui-Gon's my favorite. He's kind of got the Obi-Wan from A New Hope kind of arc, and yeah, I like the little bit of Liam Neeson we get. Obi-Wan's my favorite overall of the prequel trilogy, but in that particular one, probably Qui-Gon. Darth Maul's rad. I'll never forget seeing the Star Wars Insider magazine 2 years out where he was on the cover, and it was like, oh, that's gonna be the new Star Wars villain. So Darth Maul's rad, but probably in retrospect, Qui-Gon.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm with Aaron that Qui-Gon's my favorite. And if I wasn't going for any original characters like R2D2 and C3PO and Obi-Wan or any of those, and I was kind of thinking maybe off the beaten path, I love Watto. I don't know why. I just love his just he's got just such a goofy little attitude, and
no one else has the hyperdrive.
Yeah, no one else can get you that, I promise you. But and then even his return in Revenge of the Sith is kind of fun to see him as this homeless bum kind of character, just like
Andy,
the fall.
is that you?
Andy? And he's got that scruffy beard going on. Like, I don't know, there's something about Watto. I totally dig him.
Yeah, Watto's pretty good. I think Qui-Gon might be getting a queen sweep.
A queen sweep?
Queen sweep.
Yeah, that's a reference to something else. But yeah, because Qui-Gon I think was my favorite character in Phantom Menace as well. My son's middle name is Liam, as kind of a subtle nod reference to Qui-Gon Jinn and Liam Neeson.
Sure, I thought you were just a big Darkman fan.
just overall Liam Neeson fan. But yeah,
Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen's good too. But yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn, I definitely, for Phantom Menace specifically, is definitely one of my favorite characters. It's not here, but I remember I bought one of those plastic, because they did all those sabers, they would release them, but they wouldn't necessarily always have the right color on the inside.
Yeah.
I think but I wouldn't buy the ones unless they had the right color on the inside, because there's always a Qui-Gon one that has red on the inside of it or blue. I'm like, that's not Qui-Gon.
That's not correct. It's supposed to be green.
And you can buy Qui-Gon saber at Galaxy's Edge now too. So
nice.
That. But yeah,
there's your reason to go back.
No, but I did end up getting the actual Anakin one from Galaxy's Edge. This is not it, but it will be here
momentarily.
Yeah, but yeah. So I guess all four of us say Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn, best character Phantom Menace, because he's only in the Phantom Menace, at least as far as the movies go. And I am always bummed that they cut out because it's in the comic for Revenge of the Sith that they cut out Yoda talking with Qui-Gon in Revenge of the Sith, and I guess technically he's in Attack of the Clones when he's saying Anakin.
The little
Anakin.
voiceover.
Just the
Yeah.
voice, like Anakin.
Yeah. So, but I always thought that was just reused dialogue from this, because it sounds exactly like him saying
might
Anakin,
have
like
that.
like to run, like when
Mhm.
Darth Maul's behind them. And I don't think I knew when I was younger too that Peter Serafinowicz was doing the voice of Darth Maul, and that Ray
Yes.
Park was just the body. And then when I saw like Shaun of the Dead years later, I was like, oh wait, that's the voice of Darth Maul.
They make a joke of that in Space too, in the series too.
Oh yeah.
Peter Serafinowicz is in that, and he rehashes that line that he uses in Phantom Menace.
At last we will have a revenge.
Yep, that's the one.
There we go. But yeah, so that'll do it for episode 36 of Holdo Maneuver. We want to thank Aaron and Laurence for joining us again
Yes,
this week.
thank you.
Thank
You
you for
guys,
having
yeah, you're welcome back anytime. And then for people who would like to, you can leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice. If it allows you to do so, helps us out. All the show notes will have information on like Twitter, social media, whatever for Holdo. You can individually find us on all those places as well for the show note information too. And then where can they find you, Aaron, and where can they find you, Laurence, online?
You can find me on the interwebs at Hudson Frohawk on the Instagram and the Twitter and Letterboxd and all those places. And I also have a podcast with a friend called That Movie Is Fine.
Yes, and then I'm on Letterboxd as well as the Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't really use it much, but you can find me by you can find me by Kid Insatiable.
Nice. And yeah, and then Lauren that does the podcast with you, Aaron, she was also on Animation Fascination with me last year.
Yeah.
Talked about Marcel the Shell. So if anyone wants to check out Aaron and Lauren's podcast, I'll put that in the show notes too, so you can check that out. And then our editor is Vactor. You can find him on Instagram, Twitter, and all those places. And then you can email us at holdopod@gmail.com. And then, as always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating the Star Wars universe.
Oh dear, thank the maker.